marketing communications agency. Um, we currently use Skype, not Skype for Business, for like our internal messaging, and we use Zoom as well, more so for like client communications if we're doing like a presentation. Um, in the past, I've used Skype for Business at other organizations I've worked for, as well as Zoom, kind of in the same uh, purpose, for external communications with clients. So I think the biggest factor for using Zoom for client calls or exterior calls is just that anybody can use it. They don't necessarily have to download an app. The clarity and connectivity is probably in my experience superior to Skype. I've experienced way fewer lags or people just completely dropping off the call. The presentation, the ability to share your screen or show a presentation is just way better. I also in Zoom feel like the presenter has some more control, whether it's like muting people or just kind of being able to orchestrate the meeting a little bit better. And this is kind of a minor thing, but I do really like that in Zoom, you can change your view. So for example, if I've got, 6 different people on the call, I can shift around where that panel of people or grid of people is, especially if, one person is talking a lot and they're showing up like down in my right corner. I can move it up to the top of the screen so that it's more like when I'm listening to them, I'm maintaining what appears to be eye contact because my camera's up there. So that's a really nice feature. For Skype, I feel like most people think of it first as just a kind of a one-to-one messaging tool, not so much a presentation tool. Um, I so my 2 experiences with it in the different iterations of being like Skype versus Skype for Business. The thing I like about Skype for Business is that if you're really doesn't matter if you're a small or a big organization. As a new employee, it's nice that all of your coworkers are already programmed to do it, so you don't have to find people. Where I currently work, because we're not using Skype for Business, that is a little bit of a challenge for new people, especially if you're creating a new Skype account. At some point down the line, Skype was, I believe, acquired by Microsoft. And so now when you create a new Skype profile, your username that is discoverable by the public is this string of random numbers and letters. So it can be really challenging actually to find people. You don't have as much control as you used to do over making it, just a custom screen name. For the purposes of communicating with a client or anyone outside your organization, I would say Zoom. And I find it to be fairly easy to use. Even some of the more advanced features, like trying to set up a virtual background or, some of the display we talked about, like moving around where your panel of meeting attendees is. It all feels pretty self-explanatory, and there's not too many functions for you to be overwhelmed if you're just trying to figure it out on your own. Skype, similarly, I feel like is, there's not a ton of functions to really confuse you. The only thing that I would say with Skype that's a little challenging is we've had struggles sometimes figuring out the screen sharing feature, and I don't know if that's just because I feel like Skype maybe uses icons a bit more, and sometimes they're not always quite apparent what they mean. But yeah, other than that, I mean, because it's more simplistic and you're mainly using it for just quick text communication, it usually feels like there's not a ton to figure out. So I wouldn't really call that like complex. I guess I would say I recommend Zoom just because I think it's a higher end, product for a business. Skype to me feels more like a consumer product, and a free one at that. And so it's great for the average consumer, but I would say it has some shortcomings for business, and there are alternatives for enterprise that do what it does plus a million other things. Like if I was a business looking for a chat tool, I'd go with Slack, or something like that. Whereas Zoom, I feel like is a really great enterprise level tool for external video communications. And it can also be had on a budget if you really needed to as well. So I think that's kind of how I would tip the scales towards Zoom.